Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let's go ahead and get this started. All right, first question. I'm using the ICF 2.0. Will it matter if I remove the pendlay row and just do deadlifts instead in every workout? I'm used to 3 sets of face pulls, but before I add more sets, 1 set in your program should do the job. Thanks. That's an interesting question. Normally I tell people don't change my programs. If you're already doing 3 sets of face pulls all the time, here's what I'm going to say. If you really and truly want to focus on the deadlift more and you want to remove the pendlay rows and do deadlifts every workout instead, and you do consistently 3 sets of face pulls, 3 sets of face pulls at the end of every workout, and you don't skip those cheat curls, I'll sign off on that. I'll say, you know what? You can go ahead and do that. That'll be fine. As an alternative version, I'll say go ahead and do that. With, again, the added caveat that high volume face pulls is going to matter. Number 2, you may need to undulate the deadlift weight. All right, you might find that doing close to limit sets every day on the deadlift might be a problem. So maybe every other workout, just reduce the deadlift weight something like 5 to 10%, right? Just like we used to do on the rows with the undulating weight in session A and B, you might want to do that with the deadlifts. It's just a possibility. All right, next question. Hey Jason, I feel like I'm eternally stalled on bench press. I do have some health issues going on where my metabolism and satiety signals are really screwed up, so I don't know if it has any detrimental effect on progressive overload. I got up to a bench 255 but have since regressed in weight a lot and I can't seem to get it stronger again. I've started training it 2 times a week instead of 4 to see if that makes any difference, but it hasn't. I'm following a periodized plan for now running concurrent program for it, and it won't budge. Any suggestions? Look, if you're at 255, a concurrent style programming twice a week should actually get your bench up, right? That should get your bench up. It could be a lot of factors. It could be your diet. It could be your caloric intake. It could be your rest patterns, your sleep. You're almost at a point to where you need to hire a coach. And, something I've been thinking about only recently as of this week, and stuff like this, when I see people who are struggling with these problems, and I've had so many requests over the years to actually do online coaching, I'm actually toying with the idea of doing so by the end of the year. I might actually open up for a very, very small number of clients. I don't want to make this ever my primary job. I've thought about actually doing online coaching because it's people like this who actually do need some individual coaching at this point. Because, you've kind of typed what you wrote. You don't really know what's going on. You honestly probably need a coach at that point. You probably really do. And, that's kind of the thing that I've thought about. So I'm actually toying with the idea. I don't want people to think that because I'm saying this right here that I'm 100% going to do it. But I was really, really putting a lot of thought into it this weekend. And discussing with someone else, someone close to me who had said, I really should think about doing coaching. That I should get into coaching as an actual business model. And I might do it. And stuff like this makes me realize there's probably a need for me to do that. So many people have requested it. Let me think on it a bit. And I might put some feelers out there later to see if there's many subscribers who'd be interested in actual one-on-one coaching. Because again, it's people like this. This is someone who needs a coach. Brother, you probably need a coach at this point if you're stalled like that, because there's a lot of things going on that you probably need to sit down and have a one-on-one with someone to discuss what's going on with your lifestyle and your training. All right? It's people like this, and my comments make me realize it might be something I need to get into. Again, I don't want to do it full-time though. So it would be just only a handful of people if I do it, like probably no more than 5 ever at one time. All right, next question. Jason, I've read some articles that your maximum drug-free arm size is your wrist circumference plus 10. Is this accurate, or is this just some bioscience and you cannot really determine your potential unless you actually train for a long time? If it's true, I feel slightly discouraged because it means my arms will only ever be 16.5 inches. Thanks, coach. I can't say that that's 100% true, right? Because there's probably a genetic degree of variation regarding things like bicep peaks. Because people who have a peaking bicep, their arm is going to measure bigger on a flexed bicep. even with less muscle mass, right? Things like total muscle fiber count. Some people just have the potential for larger arms. There are certain ethnic groups that actually store more fat in the muscle in their arms, right? So it makes the arm look bigger with the same amount of muscle. They just store more fat internally. So there's a lot of factors there, right? And here's what I would say. Do you understand how damn big a 16.5-inch arm is on a drug-free lifter? If you don't have a 50-inch chest, do you know how big that looks? Because there's a lot of people who I've met in person who claim stuff like 18-inch arms, who I promise you their arms are 16 or less, who are YouTubers. There's some pretty famous YouTubers out there who have 15 to 16-inch arms who claim stuff like 17, 18, whatever in their stats. All right, a 16.5-inch arm for a drug-free lifter, especially if you're not over 200 pounds, is massive. In fact, there was even some stuff had done many years ago that had come out that they had actually measured stuff like Arnold's arms. And it turned out that even Arnold Schwarzenegger's arms when he was Mr. Olympia, when they were really measured, independently measured instead of claimed stats, were actually something like 18.5 or 19 inches. Right? They were less than 20 inches. And he was on a ton of drugs and had genetically gifted arms. All right? Perspective here, people. All right, next question. Hey, Jason, you seem to know the number of calories you eat on most days, but how closely do you actually track it to arrive at those numbers, if at all? Also, more important, do you consider for tracking to be an eating disorder, and to what extent? Thanks, Coach. I track loosely. Like, I don't know the exact number of calories. I know ballpark, I can get you within 10%. And you know what? That's all any of you can do. And that's kind of my point when it comes to the eating disorder end. If you honestly obsess over and think that you could track your calories within, say, 25 or 30, and you actually obsess over it, that's probably where you're getting into an eating disorder. Because I promise you, you do not have the tools available to do so. Your digital scale, all right, let me make that very clear. Your digital scale, scientifically and objectively speaking, cannot get you within 30 calories. It's going to give you plus or minus 5 to 10%. So in other words, if you have measured everything out with a digital scale and measuring cups and came to exactly 3,000 calories, you could easily be eating 3,150. You could easily be eating 2,800, 2,850. And actually, that's what you actually hit objectively. Even though every single tool that you have available said you ate exactly 3,000.5 calories, right? That's you can't accurately measure that. I just go off packages and labels. Like if I look over and I say, aha, 16 ounces of this steak has supposedly 1,350 calories. And I know that I ate 16 ounces of that steak. I know that it was 1,350. I know that an egg has about 70 calories in it, a large egg. So if I eat 20 eggs in a day, which is not unusual, I commonly eat 2 dozen eggs, that is 1,400 calories. So if I ate 20 eggs and a 16-ounce steak, I know that I had around 2,750, plus the veggies that I threw in, plus anything else that I throw in for the day, right? That's how I track it. I don't sit down and actually write it down. I don't use an app, but I know roughly what I eat. I know that if I eat 20 eggs and a pound of a steak that's normally 1,250 calories, or 12 or 1,350, that I know that I had around 2,750. So I know I had 2,700 to 2,800 calories, ballpark, between those two foods, right? Because I just know these things. I know what I eat. I would say if you're tracking it to the point of where you think that you know your calories within 50 and you obsess over it, and you actually have any anxiety whatsoever over it, or it interferes with your life in any way, to the point to where you are going to a restaurant and breaking out a scale in a restaurant, you have an eating disorder. And you should probably get help for that. And I'm not talking about competitive bodybuilders or physique artists, because they have mental disorders by default anyways. I'm talking about the layman, most of you out there. Unless you're about to try to make weight in a competitive environment. If you're trying to make weight for a meet coming up, a sporting event, that's a little different. For recreational purposes, that's actually an eating disorder at that point. right? Go get help. All right, next question and last question of the week. Is there an acceptable range for strength loss on a cut within which there is little to no muscle loss? And if so, do these ranges change the more advanced you are? I've been losing no more than 1 to 1.5 pounds a week for a current total of 10 pounds thus far, and my pushing movements are suffering. Bench press has already plummeted for 305 times 5 to 285 times 5 heavy grind on the third. Okay. All right. Without reading the full question, because this is running on a bit. All strength loss is indicative of muscle mass loss, right? All strength loss is indicative of muscle mass loss. My squat went down slightly between my other DEXA scans, right? I lost 4 pounds of muscle, of lean tissue, between 2 DEXA scans. The next DEXA scan, I managed to preserve all of my lean tissue on the third DEXA scan between the two. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Size equals strength. If you are seeing a loss in strength on your top end sets, not necessarily your volume work, because volume can be affected largely by caloric intake, glycogen stores, all that stuff. If your peak sets are going down on any of your big lifts, you are losing muscle. So what's an acceptable level of strength loss? Well, the acceptable level of strength loss is what's your acceptable level of muscle loss. And is that acceptable level of muscle loss okay with you if you are losing a certain amount of fat with it? That's what you need to determine. But let's be honest here. If you are losing strength, you are losing muscle. Losing body fat for lifters routinely, unless you're losing it extremely slow, and I mean extremely slow, like even 1.5 pounds a week might be causing muscle loss, right? That might actually be way too fast. So I'm going to say if you're losing more than about 0.5 pound to 1 pound of fat a week, unless you are well over 20% body fat, as a lifter, you are probably losing some muscle. You have to decide personally what's acceptable to you. But if you're losing strength, you're losing muscle. That's just the way it works. What you have to weigh out is it worth it to you, and how hard are you willing to work to regain it back off muscle memory after the fact? But it just goes with the territory. That's part of losing weight. Deal with it. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.